Hello, welcome to my gathering basket. My name is Danelle, and welcome to my home in Southwest Missouri. Happy November! Our November here has kind of started out gloomy. I hope you're enjoying more sun where you are. But right now, well, it's been raining the last 2 days. So I'm very grateful for the moisture. The garden is going to appreciate it. But it's a little dreary, and that combined with yesterday was daylight savings, so theoretically how can you get an extra hour of sleep and still feel so tired for a day or two? So I feel like I'm kind of fighting that as well, which is why I didn't get to podcast yesterday. So I've been waiting all day hoping that we would get some better light, and finally decided if I'm going to make it to the library this evening to be able to get this uploaded, I just better do what I can. So I hope the lighting's not too bad. I turned off my heat so that the fan wouldn't be blowing in our ears, and it's kind of chilly. We haven't actually had our first major killing freeze yet. We keep dancing right around the edge of it, and they say it's going to dip down into the 20s later this week. So I've got just a little bit of work to do outside. I've got a few plants. I have several mandevillas in containers that I want to get dug up and brought in so I can save those for next year. Otherwise, the garden is just pretty well put to bed. I still have friends coming over and picking kale and bok choy, but I'm pretty much done with the garden. So that's been good. In this last few days I've been able to kind of hole up inside with it being dreary out and do other things. So I actually have some things that I can share with you. Not a whole lot in the spinning department, and I'm not sure why. Usually this time of year is when I get to really spinning, but I think this is my first year in this house, and my spinning wheels are set up normally right where I'm sitting. And I enjoy being able to look out the window and just kind of zone out and watch and spin. And somehow these earlier dark evenings just aren't as conducive to enjoying sitting by closed curtains and spinning. So I need to do some work on this room and brighten it up a little bit. This is about 100-year-old house, the original part of it, and there's not much, this whole half of the house doesn't have overhead lighting. So I'm pretty much, if you look around, I think there's like 5 lamps in this room because I have to have a lamp pretty much anywhere I'm working to be able to see. So sitting, kind of with lamplight, and I don't know, I need to figure out a way to reframe this in my head that maybe instead of the lamps, I need to use an old kerosene lamp. I've got several of those, and just convince myself that I'm a historical figure or something. I don't know. But I haven't done a whole lot of spinning. In fact, trying to see where I put them. I did start doing some sampling. I started doing some sampling for the cooped up sweater. That was the sweater that I had been shown. I'll go ahead and show you a picture of it. This is a nitty, so it's a free pattern, nitty pattern called Cooped Up. Glare might be too bad here, but it's just a fun colorwork sweater with chickens in the yoke. So a friend of mine had said, hey, you need to do this. So I kind of upped the ante a little and decided that, yeah, I needed to do that, but I needed to do it out of hand spun. So last night, at Fiber Days in September, I bought all of the fiber that I would need to spin the yarn for the sweater. So I had, they fell off my lap. So last night I sat down, and this may be the first time I've ever actually sampled a spinning project, but I went ahead and did up 2 little tiny samples. They are not a fantastic swatch. Basically, I was trying to get an idea for what construction of yarn. These are both woolen spun. A lot of your classic colorwork yarns are a very loose woolen spun type of yarn. This is actually done with Letlopi, which is a singles, Icelandic singles. So I thought that a woolen spun would be the best type of construction. I'm not very good at woolen spinning. I am still practicing. So that was part of my, can I really do this? I'm also doing a sort of new to me, color blending at the wheel. Instead of, I had 2 colors of wool, and I am blending them together, just holding them together and letting them spin. So this has kind of a very much variegated, and I'm trying to decide whether I want to stay with this, or I do have a drum carder. I just have it out in storage. So if I want to break out the drum carder and really actually go through and actually blend them. So I did last night I did just little pieces of a 2 and 3 ply. And went ahead and plied them up, and then and soaked them overnight, let them dry, and this morning they're small. So I did a couple little swatches. This is a 2 ply here, and I swatched it in the round because that's what my sweater will be, and the bottom I had done in a size 7 and the top in a size 8, and then I did this one, which is a true 3 ply, and it is a very bulky, so same singles from this one and this one, but in a 2 and a 3 ply. So lessons learned. These have been sitting over my heater for I don't know how many hours, quite a while. This one is dry, this one is still very wet. We tend to be slightly humid where I live. This is going to take probably days to dry. We are definitely rainy right now, but I'm really not sure I want, and this is very heavy. Now I can do a 3 ply and back off on the size of my singles, which I have a little bit more of my fiber that I had definitely bought extra so that I could sample several different things. So I may go ahead and try doing a smaller single and doing a 3 ply, but because the color is, I don't know if you can tell, the color is definitely more even in a 3 ply because I've got 3 of the singles together. Where this is a little bit more stripy. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it. Stitches are more consistent on the 3 ply. This was way more fun to knit. So, and really the difference between, and I know you can't see this on camera, but the difference between the 7 and the 8 was pretty startling to me, just going up that one size. On the 7, I don't know if I'm probably not gonna be able to show you, but you can definitely see where my yarn is much more irregular. When I did the larger size needle, it let it kind of, once I blocked it, it let it, those stitches fill in, which you want for color work. So I'm not sure, I'm still thinking, and I still have several pieces of roving that are measured off to make sample pieces with. I may even try, I know that I'm not terribly consistent with my woolen spun, so I may just for fun go ahead and do a worsted spun sample and see. The woolen spun will come out much, if I do it correctly, should come out much airier and less heavy of a sweater overall. So on a heavy, bigger sweater, not necessarily heavier, but much more yardage, the difference in the weight of the sweater in the end would be a lot heavier typically in a worsted spun. And the interesting thing was, I was sitting this morning and knitting these up and listening to Rachel of the Woolen Spinning podcast, which if you are a spinner and you don't listen to that, put me away and go look up Rachel Welford Pearls, her woolen spinning. She has so much amazing information in her. I've learned so much. And guess what? One of the topics of conversation in today's, well, this is probably the most recent episode, was about someone who had done a woolen spin for a sweater. And it ended up coming out way heavier and denser than she had anticipated, than she really liked. It was a gorgeous, gorgeous sweater, beautiful yarn. She was wondering how she could have done what she could have done different to have a little bit different result and to make that yarn a little bit lighter, fluffier, not as heavy in the overall garment. And so I was kind of halfway, you know how sometimes you do with a podcast, just kind of working. I was knitting away and kind of listening, and all of a sudden I heard that topic come up, and I got a few good ideas. So there's a couple things I'm going to try in some new samples. So I'm really liking what I'm getting so far. I actually really like the density of this 2-ply. 2-ply is a lot. The diameter that I spun the singles on this is much closer to my default. So I think this would actually be much more fun for me to be able to spin. But I'm going to try a few other things first before I jump in and go for that. So that was really all the spinning, but I'm really kind of excited to get going on that. So that is, and I will put links to the pattern, and I don't remember right offhand. This was just kind of it was just sold as wool. I think it's Corriedale, but I'm not entirely certain. But I'll put the information down below in the description box for you if you care to follow and maybe make your own cooped up sweater. So that was my spinning. Knitting. Well, the first thing is finished my sugar maple. Finally. This poor sweater has grown up on this podcast. I can't believe how long it's taken me to do. Sugar maple pattern by Karina Spencer. I've given all the details over and over again, so I won't bore you. I will put them down below for those of you that are just joining me. But this is yarn in a gradient set from my friend Peggy of the 100th Sheep. And this was a long time coming. I think last time we talked, I was down to just the very last few rows, and I wasn't sure how much longer I wanted to make it. So this is going to be awkward. I hope you can see, because it's actually a pretty long little tunic. But it goes all the way down to an asymmetrical point at the end. And this was the point I was a little confused on, because this thing was getting, it was going to go close to knee length. But the back, it's a high-low. So in the back, I was right about here, which I knew was going to get, I was going to have to watch it to keep it from flipping up as I moved. So for the first time, I added short rows. So right about here, in fact, I did a really bad job with the short rows on this side. I was trying a new technique, and I just needed some practice. But so from about here, I added, I believe, 8 rows. So you can see how it kind of dips. And I was pretty happy actually with the way that worked. Now the gradient kit, if you can handle a faceless me, hi. The gradient kit went to this. And I think a few episodes ago I was talking about needing to get one more mini skein to finish this off to be the length I wanted. So Peggy very nicely let me commission another skein. So I wasn't able to get a true gradient at the end, but I'm very happy with the way it turned out. That last color, Danellemarie blue, actually is the flecks that are in the color right next to it. So fit-wise, I'm very happy with how it turned out. It's very comfortable. There's been a couple podcasts I've listened to that have talked about whether sparkle in yarn was comfortable or not. I have not had any problems. I've worn this. Actually, yesterday I wore it to church and had it was very cold and rainy, so I had a long sleeve t-shirt underneath of it, just a black long sleeve shirt, and that worked just great. It's also fine just by itself. So it's one that I'm going to be able to use more or less year round, I think, depending on how I pair it up. So that's always a win when you can do something that you can use throughout the year, or at least more than 1 or 2 seasons. So I am very happy to have this off the needles. I feel like it has just dragged out, although I really enjoyed the knit and I learned several new things along the way. I'm very glad to have, you just glad to have something done. So that meant I could cast on my next project. I'm really not drinking this much, just it's warm. So, and we'll talk about what's in there later on. But the next project I had said I was going to be working on is the Ann sweater. This is from the book Green Gables Knits by Joanna Johnson. I want to make sure I had that right. And the project hopefully will look something like that. And this is the one that I got the YOTH Yarns Father. So YOTH in there. Father, and this was the avocado green. Yes, color 2. It is a worsted weight, a true worsted, 220 yards. And I got this cast on. And we have the beginnings of a sweater. And of course it's going to roll up. This is one of those open front, so it's going to be not quite meet up in the front, so it's a little hard. Right now it's just all rolling up, but I've gotten fairly far. I've gotten the sleeves divided, and so there's my waist yarn, and I'm a couple inches down. So what I did, because this was actually a Sport DK pattern as written, I believe the gauge was 20 stitches over 4 inches. And I really wanted to use this yarn. So I swatched several times for it. And the best I could do that I was comfortable knitting at was 18. So I went to those lovely project pages on Ravelry and started scrolling through. And sure enough, there were 2 people that I saw right off that said they had used worsted weight 18 stitches to 4 inches, and that it had worked out and kind of gave their, in fact, one of them was making the same size I intended. And so I was able to follow her instructions to go down I'm actually doing the instructions for the smallest size. And so far, the only thing that I have done different when I tried it on right after I split for the sleeves, it's all fitting really well, but this is kind of an oversized sweater, and it felt like it was going to be just a wee bit tight in the sleeves. So I took out the row or 2 that I was working on and actually cast on a few stitches at the underarm. So, there we go. So I went ahead and added some stitches here. It would have been okay, but I just wanted a little extra room. I think this is going to grow just a little bit when I block it. I'm not entirely certain. I did check with my swatch. I was a good girl. And it didn't grow significantly, but it was also a 4-inch swatch. So my experience has been, if it grows just a smidge in a swatch, it's going to grow more in the sweater, just because of weight and the amount of yarn. So I'm making tracks fast. I've only been working on this for just a little over a week, I think, and it's going again, the larger yarn is just a little bit harder on my hands. I believe, I didn't double check, but I think I'm using a size 7, and these are just my knit picks. My oldest needles, probably. It's funny because I had only knit up until, I think 2009 I got these, and up until then I had only used like the boy plastic old nylon corded circular needles that you could get at Walmart, and I really thought knitting was terrible on my hands. And then when I got these these have kind of been my favorite. I like wooden, and these have just, I joked that they changed knitting for me, because really it made that big a difference going from those old plastic needles to these. I know these aren't big high dollar fancy needles, but they've worked, and I do have others that are fancier, but I still come back to using these. So a lot of my projects, I have 2 interchangeable sets. I do have the Chow red lace, and then my knit picks. So I have managed to break a few, lose a few, and replace them, but I still really like my knit picks. So anyway, I believe they're a size 7 is what I'm working on here. And I'm really pleased with it. I think I was just at the point where I was supposed to be starting the waist decreases. And given the size that it's coming out, I'm kind of thinking I'm just going to skip the shaping altogether and let it just be, I'm figuring this is going to be a warm, cozy, throw over everything kind of cardigan for me. Excuse me. So I think I'm just going to let it go ahead and be kind of a fuller open front cardigan. One thing when I'm knitting back and forth that I am really bad at is rowing out. So, that was a newer term to me until recently. But if you look, again, the light may be in my favor and that you can't see detail, but if you look at it, there's almost a little bit of a corrugated look to it. I have done several things. I have tried, I know Paula from the Knitting Pipeline talked quite a bit about her experience changing her knitting style just slightly to be able to avoid that. I worked on it, and honestly, I just want to enjoy the knitting. And this doesn't bother me. The funny thing is, it's not consistent. Sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. But here's the thing. Again, this is going to be a cozy wear around the house type of sweater. The Father yarn is wonderful to work with. You ball this up and kind of squeeze it, and it just has this wonderful spring to it. I don't think I'm going to have trouble with pilling with it. It's just really, I really like the yarn. But like my hand spun, it's not always consistent. It definitely has, I don't know if you can see right here, there's definitely some slubbiness to the yarn, which I don't mind at all. But when I saw that happening every once in a while anyway, I thought, I'm just gonna go for it. I don't do too many sweaters back and forth. I prefer to do them in the round, or do them in the round and steek them if I want them opened. So I'm just gonna go for it. Maybe at some point I will have the brain power, the time to sit down and really work on improving my knitting. But right now, it's for me. And it's kind of like the swatch samples that I made. When I pulled that yarn off of the wheel, actually I was doing it on my little Ashford e-spinner. So when I pulled it off and started scanning it up to soak it and get it all, the yarn blocked and ready to knit, I pulled it off, and part of me just wanted to throw that and start making some new samples. It was very irregular in places. It was thick, thin. The plying wasn't terribly consistent. It just wasn't fantastic yarn, I didn't think. But threw it in the water, let it have its blocking magic happen, and get it on my needles. It's not bad. It really, I was amazed at how good the finished swatches looked. So I guess there's a part of me that is quite a perfectionist. And then there's part of me that is maybe growing up a little bit and learning that certain amounts and certain kinds of imperfections are just fine. I can live with them. And perfect or not, this is going to be cozy. Perfect or not, I'm going to enjoy knitting that sweater. So, in fact, here's one. You can see definitely there how that's much puffier, much thicker. So you know what? If it's okay for YOTH yarns, it's okay for my hand spun yarns. And especially for, again, I don't think there's really much in the way of bad yarn, just improper pairing of yarn and project. But this more homespun, hand spun type of yarn, I think suits this project just great. So I am getting almost, I'm not quite halfway down the body yet, because this is kind of a longer tunic length. I think I have something along the lines of 75 more rows and then the hem to do. So that is Anne's sweater. And if you have not, I don't know if I said this before or not, but I actually picked this up used on Amazon, and the price to buy it used really wasn't much more than if I had just been able to buy, the patterns aren't available singly, you do have to buy the book, but to buy it used wasn't much more than if I had bought the sweater pattern. And there's actually several patterns in here that I might down the line make. So I really, and it's just, if you're an Anne of Green Gables fan, this is just such a fun book. Beautiful pictures. She did a great job with that book. So other knitting, I tried a new to me cotton yarn for the Yarn Hoarder Dishcloth Challenge. I had to get some yarn from Knit Picks for a specific project for somebody, and I wanted to, you know, how you do, fill up the order so that you get the free shipping. So I knew that I was getting close to out of my stash of cottons to do dishcloths with. So I tried this Simply Cotton Worsted that Knit Picks. They have that whole line of their Simply line that are organic, and this is the marshmallow, basically a natural color. And I thought I would give this a try. Didn't necessarily need it, but just thought it'd be interesting to try and see if it was much different than their other cotton, like their Dishy. So to me, and I haven't spent a lot of time, I did do one dishcloth. This is just kind of a waffle weave like I've done before. So it's kind of the same front and back. Just a very, very simple. This felt to me, I'm not a big fan of Dishy. It's not bad. I haven't enjoyed it as much as the other one that I've used more is the Hobby Lobby. I love this cotton. This is closer to me. It seems like, anyway, it's a little bit closer in size, diameter to Peaches and Cream. It's a little bit, it's definitely worsted. It is a heftier yarn, but it has that soft feel that I like with that. I love this cotton. So I haven't used this yet. It's the first one I've made out of that skein. I've got several more dishcloth worth in here. It's a big 100 gram skein, but I really like it. I wasn't sure, especially after having used the Dishy, and just, Dishy is a very tight spun cotton. It almost to me feels stiff, and that's just my own opinion. I know a lot of people that it's their favorite cotton, and it definitely makes a good long lasting dishcloth. I think those dishcloths are going to be around forever and ever, where some of my I love this cotton have already, from the beginning of the year, are already kind of needing replaced. They're not wonderful at this point, but they've been hard used too. So they're both great. I just didn't enjoy the knitting quite as much with the Dishy. So I really like this. I like the size, I like the squishiness of it, and it was way easier on my hands. So this would be right up there with I love this cotton for me. So that was that one. I only got 2 dishcloths done this month. The other one, I had said that in October I was going to be doing the round dishcloths. So the one that I had chosen, again, it's a free pattern on Ravelry, but the petal dishcloth. And this one is by Hazel Schrock. I have, again, linked to it down below. So I had seen people doing scrappy versions, and scrappy is so cute. There's 12 different petals. So I basically put together, I believe all of this is I love this cotton. Yeah. So I had 3 different little tiny just gumballs left that weren't going to make even half of a regular dishcloth. So I thought that would work together, and I really liked the way it came out. The only thing, and if you follow me on Instagram, you saw my picture, there were 24 ends because the way the pattern is written, you start up here and work up back and forth in short rows. I have this thing about short rows lately. And then you're done up here. So you've got this and this to weave in at the end. And then you change colors and go to the next one. So I had 24 ends basically at the end to weave in. And then you seam up, and now I can't even find it. I think it's here. Yeah, there. You seam them, you make all these 12 wedges, and then at the end you just seam up the last 2 edges together, and excuse me, and then run your needle through all of the ends of them and pull them together. So simple as pie. And if you were going to be making something out of a single color, it would be a breeze. And it's basically, I think it's an 8 or 9. The way it's written is just a little bit different. And some of the rows are kind of combined. But anyway, it's a very short, little short row section. These little wedges just take 5 or 6 minutes to do. So it was really nice to be able to have in my purse and just quick whip up one little wedge at a time. I'd like to do some more of these single colored. I'm not sure that I want to do another one with 24 ends, but I did play around at the very end. Let's see if I can find it. I think it's these. So the last 3, or I think it was 3 sections, change the pattern around a little bit. And I want to do some more tweaking, but basically what I did was stopped and changed my color before the last row of the wedge. So it gave me a kind of that pearl bump in the other color, which some people would be kind of annoyed with. It actually, the way the pattern is written, you have on the back side, you have that little pearl. It's a dishcloth, you're going to see both sides, right? So what does it really matter which side that pearl bump is on? So my thought was, if I changed when I was down at the center and then came back up on that very last row with the new color, then when I go to the next time I need that color, I went every third, so I could just pull up that same end and start over at the bottom. It actually worked pretty well. I don't know that it would work the whole way around and leave you with no ends. So I want to play with it. But it was very fun to knit. I like the end result, and I think it's worth spending a little bit of time and seeing if maybe I could figure out a way around all the ends. So there's the petal dishcloth. Several people have asked me on Instagram and Ravelry where that pattern was, and so I've tried to link to it. Very well written. Give it a try if you're looking for a different type of washcloth. So that's mostly my knitting. Now, Farmstead, I told you I'd tell you what was in this is a Poly Studio mug, knit fast and dye warm. So doing knitting and playing around with dyeing, I had to have this. Plus it's big enough to get my hands all the way around and just hold like this because I am generally a very cold person. So in my mug is rapidly cooling elderberry tea. So what I do, we have elderberries that grow along our creek bank, just a few bushes, and the city has been mowing that creek bank for years, and we actually know the people that now do the mowing, and found out that he really likes elderberry jelly. So we struck a deal with them and said, if you'll just kind of mow around that spot and leave the elderberries till the end of the season, then we'll give you all the elderberries you want. And his wife makes jellies, so they come and pick every year. And this year, last couple years, we've had so many elderberries on those bushes that we've had several different families come and help themselves, which is always fun to be able to share. And actually, I started 3 years ago, I believe, I started several bushes of tame elderberries, and this is the first year that we got a real harvest off of those. So I am well supplied with elderberries. We usually make elderberry jelly. And then a couple years ago, I started hearing about elderberry syrup. Now, I can't give you a recipe because I don't have one. I just kind of put together things that I like. And there are tons of recipes online, lots of different research. I am not recommending this as a flu cure or anything like that at all. This is, for me, it's a good drink. And if it has any health benefits as well, then fantastic. That's bonus points. But basically, I drink it as a tea. So what it is, this is a fun bottle I got actually to put my vanilla in that I'm making, but it's not ready yet to bottle, so I just grabbed one and put a nice little tag on there, elderberry syrup. So basically what this is you steep well, we freeze the elderberries because they're ready usually about the beginning part of August. We don't have time to be making syrup at that point. So I put frozen elderberries, some water, and a little bit of cinnamon, and slice up some of that ginger that I grew. So, and you steep that until the berries are, you know, till the juice is extracted basically. And then strain that all out and continue to cook it for a little while until it thickens. Some of that juice, the water evaporates, and so you're left with more of a concentrated juice. And then basically at that point I bottle it up, put it in the refrigerator, and I just make about that much at a time. I don't try to do like all of my elderberries because they're fine hanging out in the freezer. That's one nice thing about freezing the berries. You could also dry them. A lot of people buy them freeze dried. I don't have a freeze dryer, and I do have a little bit of freezer space. They don't take much room. And I go ahead and just put it in a bottle in the refrigerator for a few weeks like that. And then when I go to drink it, I can just warm up some water. I don't like it, you don't want it real hot, but a good sipping temperature for me. And then add a tablespoon or so of the syrup and about a tablespoon or so of honey to it. And that's why you don't want it real hot, because if you get up to like a boiling temperature, you can start killing off some of the benefits of the honey. So I just drink it like that. And like I said, it's a nice drink and it keeps my hands warm, which is good when you want to knit. Keep those fingers flexible. And when you live in an old house that isn't exactly the best insulated. So that's my drink of choice for the winter. And one thing that we are currently making, we are starting to pull some of the stuff out of the freezer that we just kind of chucked in there to deal with later, some of the berries, making jelly. The other thing that we do with the syrup is when we have it sweetened, you can go ahead and let the syrup cool off and sweeten the whole batch if you want to. Honestly, I just forgot this time. And it's just as easy to add a little dollop of honey as I drink it. So I use honey, my mom makes it and uses sugar, and we just have it bottled in the fridge, and my dad loves to make French crepes. So we will use it instead of syrup on our crepes. And we do that same thing with grapes and make a grape syrup, or we did peach this year, which was wonderful. And what else have we done? We've done strawberry syrup, raspberry syrup, blackberry syrup that way. So I'm not going to say it definitely has sugar or honey in it, so it's not exactly, I don't know if it's more healthy or not, but it's just a little bit different than just a plain old syrup. So anyway, that's one thing that we are doing. I've got blueberries that I want to get dried, and oh, what else do we have in there? I've got some, I think there's apples that we were going to make applesauce with. Oh, I've got blackberries that I need to get made into jelly. So we'll be doing some more of that as winter goes on. It's a whole lot more fun to stand over the stove and make jelly and all of that at this point in the year than it was in July and August. So that's what we do. We also had, oh, and then the other thing that I'm doing, I told you that this time of year is when I start checking books out of the library, watching YouTube videos, trying to plan for some different, what do I want to try this year? So this year I want to try vermicomposting, and that's basically composting with worms. I've done this a couple times. I've never had fantastic success. Part of my problem in the past was having a good place to put the compost unit. I was given, 5-6 years ago, my family gave me a worm composter, a commercial one that's really nice, and that's probably why I keep trying, because I really want to use it. I do have compost piles going out beside the garden, and we put our big, like when we pull all the green bean vines, we put those in there. We put, when we're canning, and have just gobs of food things that, you know, peeling, scraping, seeds, all that kind of stuff. We give some to the chickens, and then the rest goes in the compost pile. But during the winter, we don't have a lot of compost, and outside it's too cold for the decomposition process to really be working efficiently. So normally I would just go ahead and continue putting stuff out there. It'll break down as it breaks down. But this year I decided I have, in my grandma's old house, I have a good size mud room, utility room. and it's not, the furnace is out there, so it doesn't freeze, but it's not as warm as the rest of the house. So it's a good place to, I think it's gonna work well to put my composting unit, and I'll try to show you pictures of it when I get it all put together, if you wanna look. Some people get really weird, just think that's awful and don't wanna look. That's okay too, but I wanna try it again because it is actually a very good method of making use of like table scraps. 1 pound of worms, I've heard different things, but generally speaking, somewhere around a ½ pound of food scraps in at least a week. And I've heard day and I've heard week, so we'll see. I'm hoping I can do a little bit more precision with it this year, which sounds really weird with composting, but I just want to try some new things that I haven't tried in the past and maybe be a little bit more, I hate to say scientific, but more intentional about how I use this composting method this year. So I'm giving it a try. Over the weekend, I placed an order with a worm farm here in Missouri and just got the shipping notice a little bit ago that my worms should be here in the next day or two. And what I bought was a compost mix, and it's supposed to be it's sold by the gallon instead of the pound. So they have basically they scoop out of a gallon out of their worm bins, their beds, growing beds. So there should be adult worms, small worms, worm cocoons, which is kind of like the eggs. They're really interesting. You see these like dark little cocoons, and there's actually several eggs inside of that little cocoon nest. Okay, so side note, my great-grandparents were entomologists. They were both Cornell trained back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. I think I have always admired my great-grandmother, never met her, but she wrote an autobiography. So I have always had this thing about insects. And so maybe that's why I enjoy the bees and worm composting and silkworms and all that kind of thing. Anyway, so yeah, side history. But I think it's fascinating. I am really looking forward to, food waste is such a huge issue. Just being able to compost it, from when I lived where I couldn't compost to now, the amount of trash that I take out is so much better. I do not have a garbage disposal in this old house, so I don't have that option. So it's got to go somewhere, and I don't want to put it in the trash. Sometimes you have to do that. You don't have a good option, but I do have that option here, and I have chickens, which are amazing little composters, and I have my compost piles that are working well. I don't have enough, that stuff breaks down so fast, to be an efficient compost heap. You really want to have at least a 3x3 heap, 3 foot by 3 foot, to really get the composting process working. I did not get that. Even with all of our garden waste this year, I even raked the lawn a couple times, and I didn't get that volume. So I don't expect my compost, it's probably not going to be ready in the spring to use. I don't know, we'll see. And you don't get a huge volume with a pound of worms. But if I can just keep on top of the little bit of food scraps that I have from day to day, I also have at work, they save me their coffee grounds, and I put those in the compost pile. They have so much fun teasing me about that. But maybe I'll encourage 1 or 2 of them to start composting as well. Several of them have threatened to bring me their compost, and I've told them I will take it, but nobody's followed through on that. So this week I have worms coming. When I got the vermicompost system kit several years ago, and I went to work and I told all my friends, and I was just giddy. I said, I have my own worm composting unit, and one of my former coworkers looked at me and she just started laughing and shaking her head, and she said, "You are one special duck." So anyway, that's what I'm excited about this week, and I will let you know. I've also been doing a little bit of quilting. I don't have anything far enough along at this point to show you, but I will have that hopefully next episode. I so appreciate you spending time listening to me wax eloquent about worms. I hope there's enough knitting content and other yarny type things. And if you're not interested in the other, that's perfectly fine too. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll put my contact information below and at the end. Have a wonderful couple of weeks, and I'll see you later in the month.